Now look, wrestling fans accept a lot. We accept the gimmicks. We accept the stunts. We accept that the business survives on exaggeration and spectacle. But there is a line where performance stops and real emotional damage begins. For decades, the corporate machine blurred that exact line to chase ratings and fill arenas. And when you look back at the documented history of the women's division, a dark, undeniable pattern emerges. This wasn't just isolated bad creative or writers making a simple mistake. Across multiple eras, the corporate office repeatedly turned real pain, locker room isolation, and public shame into premium television content. These are not rumors. These are not internet conspiracies drummed up by dirt sheets. Every case we are about to break down is backed by on-the-record interviews, published autobiographies, and public statements from the wrestlers themselves. The corporate pattern is undeniable. And once you see how the company truly operated behind the curtain, you will never watch those classic eras the same way again. The insults did not stay in the ring. They followed her home. According to extensive on-the-record retrospective interviews, Molly Holly went home hurting after those shows. Not from bumps, not from chair shots, from the words. Because when Molly Holly later said on the record that as a girl, you do not want people to tell you you are ugly, she was explaining something wrestling fans ignored during that entire Divas era corporate machine. Here's the thing. Molly was an elite worker. She could wrestle circles around most of the active division. Trainers respected her. The boys respected her. But instead of building the division around her actual athletic ability, documented history shows the office turned her into a running joke built on body-shaming, virgin jokes, and constant humiliation angles. That was the brutal trade. She stated publicly that she wanted people talking about her athletic ability, not her body or sexuality. Molly wanted to be respected like a professional wrestler. The company wanted cheap, late-night spectacle. And once the audience gets trained by the commentary team to laugh at somebody, the machine just keeps feeding it. Molly understood the business was performance. She understood television characters. But in documented interviews years later, she admitted the comments still affected her emotionally. Wrestling fans love pretending performers are immune once the curtain drops. Wrong. Molly admitted she took those toxic feelings home. That is no longer just storyline heat. That is real emotional damage following somebody out of the arena parking lot and into their regular daily life. And the company kept packaging it as harmless comedy. Today, the corporate office wants praise for their women's evolution branding and empowerment speeches. But documented history shows they spent years training millions of viewers to see humiliation as prime entertainment for women who did not fit their preferred fantasy mold. That same creative philosophy damaged another respected veteran years later. In 2009, television pushed the notorious Piggy James storyline. Fans watched a woman in elite athletic shape get mocked weekly as overweight. And even back then, working-class fans understood the company wasn't trying to tell a believable athletic story. They were trying to manufacture humiliation heat fast. The backstage skits, the pig imagery, the cake spots, week after endless week. In her own documented interviews, Mickie James later admitted she hated it, not disliked it creatively. Hated it. When a respected worker goes on the record to describe an entire angle as mean-spirited, saying she felt torn while trying to stay professional, the historical record changes forever. According to documented statements from multiple people involved, even Michelle McCool and Layla felt uncomfortable performing the material. The performers almost seemed trapped inside the vicious gimmick themselves. Truth is, the company wanted real heat, not playful boos, genuine audience dislike, and management believed the fastest shortcut was public humiliation. Mickie herself later explained she had to aggressively separate personal feelings from her professionalism just to survive the angle. That tells you how rough the experience felt backstage. She called it cheap heat on the record. That phrase hits hard in wrestling circles. It means the writers did not earn the reaction. They took the lazy route, endless insults and shock value over actual craftsmanship. Documented accounts show female viewers watching at home felt the toxic body image messaging firsthand. Mickie survived it because fans already respected her work rate too much, but the documented reality remains that she was forced into a gimmick she privately despised while management chased television ratings. But the damage was not always handed down from the writers. Sometimes the locker room itself created the isolation. People romanticize old ECW like it was one giant family. The boys suffered together against the big corporate monopolies. That is the mythology fans still tell. But documented accounts paint a different picture underneath that warm nostalgia. According to Dawn Marie's own on-the-record shoots regarding the ECW one-night stand environment, when she walked in trying to be friendly and professional, she got treated like she wasn't even human. Dawn stated publicly she offered a handshake, basic locker room respect. Instead, she described Francine brushing her off and referring to her as it, not her name. It. That is not normal tension. That is somebody making it clear they do not even acknowledge your place in the room. Once somebody gets socially frozen out backstage, wrestling becomes miserable fast. Dawn later explained on the record that she felt upset enough that she sought out Joey Styles for a backstage intervention. See, in wrestling culture, respect inside the locker room dictates your survival. When a veteran talent feels isolated enough to seek backup, the atmosphere is already hostile. According to her documented version of events, underneath the reunion nostalgia sat old rivalries, territorial behavior, and cold resentment that never got resolved. Nostalgia shows reopen old wounds for the workers living them. Using language like it strips identity away, it signals rejection publicly in front of peers. Dawn talking openly about how much it bothered her mattered because she was describing what isolation inside wrestling feels like emotionally. Noise everywhere, cameras flashing, crowds cheering, but you still feel isolated in the room. Sometimes the isolation happens because the company decides you matter more than everybody else. Hardcore Holly documented this shift inside the Attitude Era locker room in his published autobiography. He noticed Chyna changing backstage, not in the ring, in the locker room. According to Holly's on-the-record account, Chyna used to be warm with lower-card wrestlers early on. She would bring him Twix bars and call him Twixie. Then DX exploded. She became a massive crossover attraction, and Holly stated she changed. She stopped acknowledging wrestlers beneath her on the card, even when he was working directly with her in Intercontinental Championship programs. The Attitude Era locker room operated on a strict, cutthroat hierarchy. Guys protected pushes. People fought over television minutes because television meant main event money. Old territory mentalities dictated who ate first and who got ignored. Holly's documented story captures how stardom itself changed the social structure around her. Pushes create distance. Fame creates brick walls. Top stars in wrestling often end up trapped inside smaller and smaller circles. Every conversation becomes about business. Real friendships get harder to trust because everybody wants position. That machine eats people alive. Holly's on-the-record comments survive because they highlight a documented truth of the business. Success changes the temperature backstage faster than anything else. One day, you are sharing jokes, and the next day, you barely get acknowledged in catering. The higher Chyna climbed the corporate ladder, the more isolated she became from the very people she started with. But no documented case exposes the company's willingness to exploit trauma, quite like Lita's run from 2004 to 2006. The humiliation was forced onto her in consecutive stages. Then, before she could even recover, the real-life affair between her, Edge, and Matt Hardy exploded publicly. Instead of protecting their talent, documented history proves the company folded the entire real-life emotional collapse directly into television. Public statements from Lisa Ortiz at the time accused the company of protecting their corporate image over people, cashing in on real-life drama for profit. Suddenly, the betrayal was weekly programming. Matt Hardy returned as the sympathetic hero. Edge became the top villain, but Lita became the center of the public shame. Years later, speaking on the record, Lita admitted she was already punishing herself internally, telling herself she deserved the backlash. To letting locker room isolation fester, the documented history shows exactly how the machine operated. The company taught audiences to view women's pain as entertainment. They prioritized shock television over the mental well-being of the talent holding their divisions together. You have watched this product for years. You saw these angles unfold on your screens. Deep down, you knew something felt wrong when you watched Mickie James get humiliated, or when you saw Lita standing in the ring looking visibly broken. Now you know the truth behind the red light. The wrestling business demands loyalty, but as these documented cases prove, that loyalty rarely flows back down to the talent when ratings are on the line. Some of these women eventually walked away from the business. Some struggled for years to rebuild their confidence. None of them ever forgot what it felt like to have their private insecurities dragged out in front of millions of people. And the locker room kept these secrets hidden longer than the public ever knew. If this is what happened to the women whose stories made it into the public record, imagine what hasn't been documented yet. The industry claims it has evolved. They claim the dark days of locker room cruelty and public humiliation are in the past. But corporate patterns this deep and ingrained in the culture rarely disappear overnight. They just change their shape and presentation. Next time, we will look at the documented contracts, the hidden clauses, and the predatory financial traps that kept these very same performers locked inside the system for years.